Hello, and welcome to another U.S. Tech Workers podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Lynn, and today is May 12th, 2020. And tonight I am joined once again by John Miano, attorney, author, and all-around defender of U.S. Tech Workers. John, how you doing?
Hey, great. Glad to be here, Kevin.
Well, John, I don't know if I'm glad to be here tonight with you or not. The last time we got together, we did a podcast in under 2 minutes and 20 seconds so that we could get it on Twitter. And tonight, we're not going to have that luxury because we are going to go through the House version of the Supplemental Appropriations Bill, which they're referring to now, I believe, as the HEROES Act. And John, I can't help but think that if you want to understand why and how our immigration system is so screwed up, just peruse this bill. I mean, there is so much bad in this bill when it comes to immigration, but I'd like to just focus on some, hit some of the key provisions with you, get your idea, and really the purpose is to educate the legislative aides and the Senate and the folks in the Senate as to what to look for in this bill and hopefully pull it out.
Well, Kevin, I mean, the basic problem here is that, the horse is the cow has already left the barn. They're trying to do this after the fact, and trying to change the immigration system to accommodate the COVID-19 China virus. It's already too late to do that from an immigration perspective. And so they've just got a bunch of incoherent provisions to mess with the immigration system. By the time they get implemented, the pandemic will be all over.
Gone. But sadly, these statutes will remain with us. It's crazy. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share our screen, John, and we'll get cracking.
Okay.
And here it is, HR, whatever it's going to be.
I think the number is 6,800, if I remember.
6,800, okay. And as I mentioned, making emergency supplemental appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2020. So what I'd like to do, John, there's a provision. It's on page 1730. So I'll go ahead and search that Jamoki out. This bill is 1,813 pages long. And okay, so here we go, John. This is the first clause I'd like to talk to you about, and it's about departure delays. And it says, in case of an alien who was lawfully present in the United States on January 26, 2020, the alien shall not be considered to be unlawfully present in the United States during the period described in subsection D.
Yeah, so they're basically saying that you can be here illegally during the period of the coronavirus epidemic. So there don't appear to be any restrictions on who that even applies to. Now, in theory, like if you're a person who has a visa that's now invalid by the normal system, and you would have to go home, it might be very difficult for you to go home. So it would be, unjust to penalize such a person, and say, okay, you can't ever come back because there were no planes going to your home country.
And that makes sense to me. I think, a country should attempt to repatriate its citizens with all due haste, but in the event that you cannot, that's acceptable. That's not bad.
But
we're just wading into the swamp here.
Yeah, but DHS can do that on their own. I mean, they could do it through their own prosecutorial discretion.
Yeah, absolutely. Why does it have to be in this statute? I don't, who stayed up late at night to put that in? That's what I'd like to know. Okay.
And that even apparently would apply to people who are here illegally too.
Yes.
So everybody who were illegally in the first place. So you're basically having people who are in a sympathetic position having the ability to be piggybacked by people who really aren't in such a sympathetic position.
Crazy. Well, the next thing we're going to get into, page 1731, extension of visa expiration, notwithstanding the limitations under section 221. I won't get to the rest. The Immigration Nationality Act, blah, 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 blah. In the case of any immigrant visa issued to an alien that expires or expired during the period described in subsection D, the period validity of the visa is extended until the date that is 90 days after the end of such period.
Well, again, this is something that could be, that DHS could have just dealt with on their own. There's saying if your immigrant visa, your essentially green card, is expired, that that you can stay longer. And again, the question is why Congress is doing that. By the time this is done and any regulations come out, the period will probably this period will probably be over.
Absolutely. Now here, this is interesting, John, and this made me really kind of wince a bit. Rollover of unused visas, because you have to think with the lockdown and the restrictions on international travel that a lot of visas simply aren't going to be utilized in the year 2020. And now what this says is in general for fiscal years 2021 and 2022, the worldwide level of family-sponsored immigrants under section C of section blah, 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 the worldwide level of employment-based immigrants under subsection blah, 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 and the worldwide level of diversity immigrants under subsection blah, blah. I'll page down.
Well, what's going on? This is a kind of a scam that's been used.
Yeah, because here we have the computation of increase. Yeah, so go ahead, John.
Well, basically, there's what they're saying. This has been appeared in a number of bills, and what the general scam is: if we don't use a visa in a previous year, we'll use it next year. So what they're saying is that if we don't reach the visa quotas for immigrants during this period, then we take the visas and increase the subsequent quotas by the number of unused visas.
Who puts things like this into the law? I mean, my God, what is there? I mean, there has to be some kind of cult of open borders and get my tribe into the U.S. at all possible haste that it has leached on or latched on to Washington, D.C. I don't understand this.
You know, we probably have to know the lobbyists who got this, who paid to get this in, what the motivation is. It basically, but what you see here is the view that the quotas are not quotas; they're the number that are to be used. So every year we should be hitting the maximum, regardless. You would think that rather than you would expect it in down times, like down economy, visas would go.
John, we have over 33 million unemployed Americans right now. We are not going to be back to normal by 2022. I'm sorry. This is just ridiculous.
That's kind of a head scratcher. But again, I mean, when you read this bill, you realize, why things are so screwed up. I mean, we have Congress. This is Congress's approach to
this. Is it? I mean, you have a nation that is scared and insecure. The economy is in the toilet. Forget what you're seeing in the stock markets. And this is what our representatives are focused on? My God.
It is absolutely amazing. And right now, Congress should be focused on immediate relief. I mean, to think if there's any immediate relief that can happen instantly, and they should be preparing already on how we're going to dig out of this hole when it's all over. And
absolutely.
Now.
And I appreciate you said that, John, because to me right now we're still in the storm. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of us are in the eye of it, others are out getting hit by it, but eventually we're going to go out and assess the damage one of these days, and it's not going to be pretty. All right, we got to move along because We're going to be here a long time, I'm afraid, John. Okay. The next is deals with green card reallocations. And here we go. I thought I had this one set up. Okay, here we go. Allocation along preference categories. Additional visas made available for fiscal year 2021. Okay, we have that taken care of. Okay, the next one is temporary protections for essential critical infrastructure workers. And that is on page 1737. Okay, so here we go. Temporary protections for essential critical infrastructure workers. Protections for essential critical infrastructure workers during the period described in subsection E and alien described in subsection D shall be deemed to be in a period of deferred action and authorized for employment for purposes of section 274A of the Immigration and Nationality Act.
So this is a bit of legislative malpractice, to say that, because deferred action is something created through regulation, where they say that we're not going to prosecute you for some reason.
Because they have the employer protections in there, I guess.
Well, I mean, and so this is deferred action entirely a regulatory concept. So what Congress is now, this provision is basically layering statutes on top of regulations that implement statutes. So it's completely nonsensical. It's a product of incompetence. I mean, whoever wrote this is an absolute incompetent. But
it's our Congress.
But I mean, it's just written written as incompetence. What basically saying is ordering the executive to follow a regulatory process, which in theory they could get rid of through regulation, but it's rather nonsensical. But then what adds to the nonsense is they're saying certain people should receive this prosecutorial discretion. Okay, so you see where I'm getting here is that deferred action is prosecutorial discretion, but they're saying that you must give this prosecutorial discretion, so it really isn't prosecutorial discretion.
But then you repeat yourself.
Yes. But what further makes this hilarious is it says, alien described in subsection D, which if you scroll down, it seems
let me do that. Let me do that, John, because this will be fun. Come on, scroll down, scroll down.
It is an alien who's engaged in essential critical infrastructure on line 6. You scroll.
Right, an alien described in some. No, I'm sorry. There's so many pages to this thing. We're just bouncing all over.
Yeah, it's the next page, line 6. So it's a person engaged in essential critical infrastructure in the United States during the Corona period.
Actually, let's go. Want to find that? I think I have it bookmarked. What they call an essential person, John.
That's the bottom of that page. It starts and goes on for pages.
Oh my gosh! It does.
Yeah.
Come on.
For the purpose of this term, essential means.
Okay, essential critical infrastructure, labor, or services. For the purpose of this section, the term essential critical infrastructure, labor, or services means labor or services performed in an essential critical infrastructure sector, as described in the advisory memorandum on identification of critical infrastructure.
So again,
infrastructure workers during COVID-19 response, revised by Department of Homeland Security, April 17, 2020.
So again, we have statutes referring back to administrative documents rather than defining it. But they also, in other parts, they have other sections in here which define essential labor as well.
And we'll get it. I'll pull
That's
that
it.
up. Do you want me to pull that up now, or should we wait?
Let's get it when we get to it.
Okay, we'll try to stay in page order here. Okay, so we're here. We're right here at the next one. Supplementing the COVID response workforce, expedited green cards for certain physicians in the United States.
Yes.
In general, during the period described in paragraph 3, an alien described in paragraph 2 may apply to acquire the status of an alien lawfully admitted to the United States for permanent residence consistent with section 201(b)(1) of the Immigration Nationality Act. An alien described in paragraph is an alien physician and the spouse and children of an alien, of such alien who has an approved immigrant visa petition under section 203(b)(2) of the Immigration Nationality Act, and has completed service requirements for a waiver under such a section on or before the date of enactment of this title. So engaged or will engage in the practice of medicine or medical research involving diagnosis, treatment, or prevention of COVID-19. I mean, John, think of it. This is a country of over 330 million people. How does a bureaucracy sift through all the healthcare people here on visas, whether it's a J1, H1B, O visa, and kind of say, okay, are you doing something in the COVID fight or not? And again, like you were talking about, by the time this gets promulgated, it'll never get implemented.
Well, the other thing, it's basically anyone who's a medical doctor who's on a temporary visa can apply for a green card. That's apparently what this is saying under the hidden text here, because will engage in the practice of medicine involving the diagnosis, treatment, or prevention of COVID-19. I mean, in some way that could affect every single doctor. You
want to see something interesting, John? I was playing around with healthcare workers, H-1B visas, J-1 visas, everything. And I'm going to share another screen with you. One moment. Here we go. Share. And there we go. Open. Okay. So when we look at from 2010 through 2019, these are all the LCA applications for an H-1B visa. And look at the tiny percentage that is for folks that are in healthcare related fields. So the little green thing there at the bottom is LCA applications for medical. So that's 2.5% of all LCA H-1B visa applications. Now check this out. Of that 2.5%, only 31% of them are physicians. You know, the majority are, we got therapists, internists, pharmacists. And when you look at who employs, you know, the biggest filers for H-1Bs for healthcare occupations, you know, it's pharmacies, it's management, healthcare staffing firms like nurses and pharmacies and staffing. Those are the top 4. So it's not like we're getting a lot of doctors through these pipelines. So I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Well, that's, I mean, one of the marketing things that are used for various programs is to pull out, you know, some medical relationship. As you notice, virtually no, effectively no doctors are coming through on these on the H-1B program. Okay?
Right. We'll talk about it later because it's in here, the J-1 visa, which is
but you see the same thing going on with DACA right now. You know that it's being marketed that if we don't that the Supreme Court rules against DACA, we're going to be, all these medical workers are going to be hit. And in reality, there's a very very small percentage of medical professionals on DACA, very small percentage on H-1B. So in large part, this is a problem. a problem in search of a solution here. A solution in
That's
search
actually a great way to
of a
frame it,
problem.
John. A problem in search of a solution. That's a great way to frame
Or better yet, it's a solution in search of a problem,
it.
which is more like it here.
Or, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. It's
Okay.
been a long day. Okay, here we go. The next thing we're going to discuss is waiving the interviews. Except as provided in section 22H, subparagraph 2 of the Immigration Nationality Act, the Secretary of State shall waive the interview of any alien seeking a non-immigrant visa based on an approved petition described in paragraph 1A. Such alien is applying for a visa not more than 3 years after the date on which such alien's prior visa expired. In the visa classification for which such prior visa was issued at a consular post located in alien's country of residence, or if otherwise required by regulation, country or nationality. So we just don't do interviews anymore. You know, come to America.
It's just nuts here. And again, by the time this moves through or whatever, you know, and there's some way of implementing this, we're going to be well past the time of the coronavirus crisis.
Yet they just can't help themselves. It's almost like they're carrying the water for someone and they need to demonstrate that, oh, look, I've carried the water. Look what I put into this bill.
Yeah.
So here we go. The next one is improving mobility of non-immigrant COVID-19 workers. Licensure, notwithstanding section 212J, subparagraph 2 of the Immigration Nationality Act, for the period described in paragraph 6, the Secretary of Homeland Security may approve a petition for classification as a non-immigrant described under section 101, subparagraph A, 15, subparagraph H, I, B of such act filed on behalf of a physician for the purpose of performing direct patient care if such physician possesses a license or other authorization required by the state of intended employment to practice medicine.
Basically saying that allowing non-immigrants to move around and change jobs, the medical profession.
Which is exactly what a lot of these medical staffing firms have been wanting. They want to have these guys be high, because with it, like the H-1B visa, for instance, the J-1 visa, these are location dependent visas. And if they can get this mobility in there, well, they can just shop these guys to their heart's content.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how this would apply after the crisis. It doesn't seem to have a time limitation in it.
And that's why I think it's set up for staffing type agencies. It's something they'll bury in here and they'll just keep at it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have a time limit on when it'll be. But again, I said the number of people here this would affect is so small that it wouldn't be a noticeable response to the current crisis. Exactly.
Why, with all the issues facing the country, are they? Because I mean, someone had to go through the time and the effort to write this stuff up and throw it in there, kind of find a way to jawbone it into this piece of legislation. This is what our Congress is doing. Okay. Now this I thought was interesting. This is another thing that appears to be jawboned in. Clarification on telemedicine. Let me bring this up so you can see it, John. Oh, sorry. There we go. Clarification on telemedicine. Nothing in the Immigration and Nationality Act or any other provision of law shall be construed to require an employer of a non-immigrant, that's someone here on employment visa, alien described in section 101, and we've been through that before, of the Immigration Nationality Act, to file an amended or new petition under section 214A such act if the alien is a physician or healthcare worker who will provide remote patient care through the use of real-time audio-visual communication tools to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, again, the effect of this would be so small, one can't imagine why Congress would even bother. But my guess here is that there's that somebody with money is engaged in this business of providing
Well, you know, I have friends and colleagues who work in Silicon Valley. Now, H-1B workers are supposed to be working at an actual physical location, but most work from home, remotely from Starbucks. So this is probably what that's a throw out to. I don't know if there's an end time in here for this particular provision. You know, I didn't see one. So, hey, this way, you know, they've killed two birds with one stone. They get to retain their H-1B workers here, and then they get to have send them, you know, have them work from home. How convenient. They won't let American tech workers work from home, but they'll do this. Now, here we go. 1747 is permissible work activities for J1 physicians. Now, J1 is how we bring alien physicians into the country to accept residencies at U.S. teaching hospitals. The J1, which is the thing that blows my mind, the J1 is a temporary cultural exchange visa. It's like an education, it's an internship kind of visa. And it's a temporary visa. They go home at the end of it. But, and again, they seem to want to say, okay, you might be here doing a residency at such and such hospital, but you can kind of do whatever you want. Is that what you get out of this, John? What is your take on this?
Well, say that they can work outside of their program on a J1 visa. But again, this kind of reflects the large problem that we have in the immigration system is no one can define what these visas are or what they're supposed to be. I mean, if you take a description of what an H-1B visa is supposed to be, you know, a temporary visa, typical is a temporary visa to fill jobs that Americans can't fill on it. And that's nothing like what H-1B, because we've allowed them to morph. We've allowed the J visa to morph. We can't discern the purpose of any of these visas anymore.
Wow, okay. All right, the next one, let me scroll down here. Yeah, this is interesting. This next one is on the O visa. And I thought this was an interesting to put in here because once again, the O visa, portability of O1 visa, O1 non-immigrants, a non-immigrant who was previously issued a visa or otherwise provided non-immigrant status under section 101.15.1 of the Immigration and Nationality Act of, all right, seeking extension of status is authorized to accept new employment under the terms and conditions described in this section. You know, what's interesting, John, is there's, I've heard a lot of talk about of using O1 visas for foreign trained physicians to come here and take residencies at U.S. teaching hospitals as opposed to the J1, because I guess the criticisms that we've been, you know, laying at their feet about the, you know, the abuse of the J1 to do this is, you know, they seem to be reacting to it. So this could all be part of that. But what's your take on this, John?
Again, it's just it seems to undermine any provisions designed to ensure the integrity of the system by allowing people just appears to just allow them to move willy-nilly. You know, where are without the government being able to identify where these non-immigrants are working. It says just that they can go out and just take a new job, which is kind of puzzling under a non-immigrant visa.
Why not? Oh gosh, again, over 33 million Americans unemployed, and this is what they're spending their time on. Now the next one, again, more portability. This one is entitled, it's on page 1752. You know, I gotta hand it to, you know, you and Roger, you guys went through this thing. You know, Roger just parsed this thing out, trying to find, you know, a lot of these really reprehensible clauses. And so we go, really hats off to Roger on this one. All right, so this one, the temporary portability, here we go. the temporary portability for physicians and critical healthcare workers in response to COVID-19 public health emergency. In general, not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this title, the Secretary of Homeland Security, in consultation with the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, shall establish emergency procedures to provide employment authorizations to aliens described in paragraph 2 for purpose of facilitating the temporary deployment of such aliens to practice medicine, provide health care, or engage in medical research involving the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of COVID-19. Now, John, I don't know if you're aware, but every year, 1,200 physicians, doctors who graduate from U.S. colleges don't get residencies. And if you don't get a residency, you don't get a license. And if you don't get a license, you don't get to practice medicine. Add to that the number of U.S. citizens who've gotten their medical education abroad. And thousands of them every year don't get residencies at U.S. teaching hospitals, despite residencies being paid for by the taxpayer. And here they seem to be exhausting themselves to make sure that foreign physicians can, have the run of the place. I don't understand this. What is your interpretation of this? Am I crazy?
Well, this one, what's puzzling to me here is, notice we've already hit several provisions dealing with portability for doctors, being able to move around. There's not one central, there's no central planning. It's just scattered like a shotgun blast of provisions all over describing portability. But the other thing, though, these are all tied to COVID-19. There's no plan to what to happen for the next time this kind of thing happens.
John, say that again. This is all, they're right. All of it, these statutes in this bill are tied to COVID-19. Are they going to be tied to COVID-20, or do we got to redo the whole thing or in 2021?
Yeah, because what you can see here is no one in the House of Representatives or at least no one in the House of Representatives had any involvement in this bill, has any comprehensive plan on use of immigration policy to address a health crisis. Okay, they clearly haven't thought about it. They've just done a shotgun approach to this, and I mean it's already effectively too late for this COVID-19. If you were going to do this, you think Congress would be having a plan for the next virus. No,
right. It's just in case this happens again. We know these things come along. It's interesting, John, talking about, should it happen again? I was pulling some books off the bookshelf, and Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet fell off the shelf. And you might recall the whole reason the string of events that led to their committing suicide was because the friar who was supposed to deliver this potion and a message was stuck in a quarantine situation, and he couldn't get out. And so, it's funny. We've lived with plague, and we've lived with these kind of health crises probably since humans, started walking the earth 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens. And here we are making these outrageous policies at a time when we should be being more level-headed and focused on taking care of business. And I just don't see it.
Well, people in the Senate, on the Senate side, do actually watch this. I mean, what I'd say is, we need to be planning for the next one. It's already too late for this one, and you need to look at how could immigration policy improve the healthcare during a crisis. And I suspect if you took a look at that, you'd find out that there's not really a whole lot that immigration policy could do to help address this type of crisis due to the relatively small number of workers involved.
Because now to properly address this healthcare emergency, we would have to make investments in our colleges. We'd have to, I mean, demand, I don't know if you know this, John, but enrollment is way up for medical school and other healthcare related courses of study. It's actually down for attorneys, but there is demand out there because, you know, there's demand because there are jobs. Yet, for some reason, this racket that is the American healthcare system doesn't want to make those kinds of investments. They don't want to invest in our people here, even though they want to learn. They're eager and willing to learn and work, but we don't seem to want to make those investments. What they want to do is slap a bandage on it, pretend we can all go back to making profits as normal, and we'll just bring in some, you know, a bunch of, you know, hardworking foreigners because there's things that Americans won't do, like like heal the sick and things like that. We just don't have any interest in that. We're so petty.
Well, I mean, one of the things that's kind of funny is, you know, we have all these state licensing restrictions out there. It would seem you could get more bang for the buck by allowing doctors to practice across state borders during a crisis.
Wow, boy, you're getting into breaking up people's monopolies there, John. That's how you make money in the racket. You constrict the inflow.
Well, you see, I didn't say that about lawyers and circumventing bar restrictions. So it's okay. But again, I don't think that this is a problem that's going to be solved by immigration policy. And it looks like a solution in search of a problem again.
Yep. And John, we have one more provision to go through, and then let's call it a night.
Okay.
All right. And this is protections for surviving spouses and children.
Yeah, again, surviving spouse and children, it appears to protect only those who are in healthcare involved in COVID-19 treatment.
Once again, yet someone took the time to put this in there, and you got to kind of wonder, what is the psyche of this with everything else going on? Age out protections, continuation of immigrant status, so a spouse or child of an alien who dies, it shall be considered to have maintained lawful non-immigrant status until earlier of that date on which the Secretary of Homeland Security accepts the filing an application for adjustment of status based on a petition described in blah, blah, blah.
I mean, the numbers of people involved here is so small that, I mean, this is the sort of thing that you could be addressed with private bills.
Yeah, and frankly, they've already restricted the number to 4,000.
So it doesn't. I mean, we have a crisis, and this is what Congress is doing. I mean, it makes you really wonder.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting our money's worth, John.
Oh God, no.
Oh, well, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Before we go, we should do a readout. Who sponsored this?
Oh, great idea. Let me go to the front of the document there.
Yeah.
Let's just go up through the 1,813 pages.
Yeah.
And let's take a look there. All right, here we go. All right, I will go ahead and share our screen. We have Mrs. Lowry for herself, Mr. Engel, Ms. Carolyn B. Maloney of New York, Mr. Nadler, Mr. Pallone, Mr. Scott of Virginia, Mr. Takano, Ms. Velasquez, Ms. Waters. There you go.
So it looks like a New York, New Jersey, and California system. And you know, considering how well those states are run, I guess this makes a lot of sense.
You know, it's, you know, I lived 20 years in Los Angeles, and I gotta say, if there's a city unprepared for pandemic, along with San Francisco at this point, and, you know, I'm just blown away that you look at the amount of homelessness, the overcrowding, the, you know, the stress on the infrastructure everywhere. It's tragic. And this is what they chose to do. Now, John, we didn't even really, when you look at what's the garbage that's in this bill, we haven't even scratched the surface because we focused on immigration issues. But, you know,
Yeah.
it's a throw out to the dark money class. Once again, I'm excited. Hey, I haven't found it yet, but I'm sure there's a crumb in there for me and you.
I'm sure somewhere we've got something, but you know, in some ways you've got to laugh at this. But
You know, John, if I didn't laugh, I'd cry.
out there. But the thing that I said just find absolutely amazing is they don't have any plan, any idea how to get out of this crisis and how we would address the next one.
Wow, that's right. Absolutely right, John. Oh, boy. Well, there you go. I'm going to stop our share here. And John, well, I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'm going to, you know, when the Zoom gods, you know, process this, I'll download it, and hopefully I won't have to cut and paste those portions of the bill into it. Hopefully everyone can see it on the screen. I'll get to bed before midnight tonight. But,
okay. Well, great talking to you again.
as always, John, really appreciate your wise counsel on this.
Yeah, back to my igloo in Nome, Alaska.
Yeah, there you go. All right, John, take care.
Good night.